drawing the Beast Titan, right? You guys can see right here, I've done the Colossus Titan, the Armored Titan, as well as the female Titan and Aaron's Titan form. But when it came down to drawing the Beast Titan, this one to me was easy and hard at the same time. I know, you're like, what is he talking about? How can something be easy and hard? Well, there's nuances to this, all right? So number one, drawing the Beast Titan was easier compared to the Colossal Titan, mainly because the Colossal Titan have so much detail of the whole human anatomy of the face. Think of it like you're drawing the muscles of the inside of someone's face, right? So there's a lot of detail with that, lots of muscle textures and all that stuff that I had to work with, as well as the different designs. So I like drawing stuff like this because it gives you more of an appreciation of the original artist, or whether it's manga artist, comic book artist, or anybody who is the original creator. And it gives you more of an appreciation because you're drawing it yourself rather than just looking at it as a consumer. So with the Beast Titan, the easiest part was, of course, the fur. Since there is no muscle fibers or any type of, detailed texture that I had to work on compared to the others, it made it so much easier. And at the same time, he's pretty much Bigfoot. Let's just not beat around the bush. He's pretty much Bigfoot, right? So all these are created with a ballpoint pen. You would get these pens anywhere from Staples to even the 99-cent store. I'm a big fan of ballpoint pen, mainly because you have the fluidity of going from light to dark. And I start everything with the ballpoint pen. I'm not using a regular pencil and then erasing it. It's just with the ballpoint pen, it's a lot easier because you just start really light, and then when you commit over time as it gets more detailed, that's when it goes darker. So the first thing I do, of course, is to start light and just give a good feel and direction of what I'm creating. Now, I have the references right in front of me on my computer screen, and since I have 3 monitors, on the left hand side I'm looking at the OBS, so that actually helps out of seeing it from a further view, even though I'm physically looking at the tangible sketchbook. So start off light, really light, and then just figuring out the gesture and their angle of what I'm doing, right? So it's always good to do that and never just to start off by drawing the eyes and drawing the details. Don't do details first, because you want to have a ghosting. You want to have a ghosting effect. So what ghosting is to start light and ghost the structure of what you created before going into the detail. That way, if you won't make any mistakes as far as the proportions, because once the proportions are off, especially if you're drawing with a ballpoint pen, you can't erase it. It's permanent, right? And yeah, it's not going to look aesthetically appealing if you use whiteout, right? So that's what I do from there. And what makes this difficult is the simple fact that the pen is just, ballpoint pens are good as far as going light to dark, but they're not the best when it comes down to making it a solid black, right? You have other materials out there like a micron pen, like those, or a thicker marker with dry media, like it's wet media, but you know what I'm saying, as far as that type of material where it could use on a sketchbook without destroying the integrity of the sketchbook. The problem with those is that you can't really mix that material with a ballpoint pen. So it's either that or you use a nib, right, which is the old school calligraphy where you have the ink and then you dip it with the pen, and that's the stylo, right? That's like the old school way of, like, the original way of actually doing stuff if you want to create artwork from that type of material. Me personally, I like ballpoint pens. It's just not the best when it comes down to making it solid. So that's what I meant by this is the hard part, which is, of course, creating that texture of the fur. I It wasn't too difficult compared to the Colossal Titan because it wasn't as detailed, but the fur itself, there was a point where when making it, I'm like, okay, this is way more than I thought. I'm gonna just try to put in as much darkness as I can, but I'm not gonna fill the whole thing with the darkness of it. It'll just drive me insane, right? And then it will start hurting my hand. So I decided to go from directional lighting, which is using lighting from the right hand side. Another thing, speaking of lighting, that I like to do as well is reflective lighting. So reflective lighting is literally, it's just a exaggeration of our skin tone, where whether it's natural light or studio light, our skin is slightly translucent, right? Even animals, some of their skins will all have slightly translucency, right? So when it comes down to whether it's the right hand side or left hand side, depending on how the light is being directed, they're still going to have a bit of that reflective light. And I like to showcase that, especially with traditional ballpoint pen art. And these are one of those styles to make your sketch or whatever you're designing to make it look more three-dimensional, as if you create this illusion for it to pop out from the canvas, right? So canvases could be from a tattoo design to sketchbook to digital art. It's all the same, is to create an artistic visual to communicate a sense of three-dimensionality or something that is out of the ordinary. When making the Beast Titan, I was looking at the reference a lot when it came down to the shadow. So even with the eyes, I was like, the original eyes, when I had it, it was too light. So here I was like, okay, I gotta make it darker because his ape, I guess you could call like the beast, like sort of ape type of thing, like Goku Super Saiyan 3, like that type of ape, like the muscular eyebrows, as I call it. It pops out for the Beast Titan, but then because of that, the eyes concave, so it creates a shadow underneath it, right? So I have to apply by the rules of how the character is originally created. So back and forth, I was just making the eyes darker, making it darker, but I didn't want to take away the integrity of what I created with the eyes by making it pop out. So it was like a back and forth. So around the iris, I made it darker, but the eyes itself, I still wanted that to pop out. And I was still contemplating back and forth on whether or not I was going to make it either stylized, like the one you see there with the digital art on the right hand side. That one has no eye pupil whatsoever, so I went with that approach. But this one, I actually decided to give it some eyes, right? Give it more of a realistic, natural look. Another thing about Zeke's Beast Titan is his mouth. Of course, a lot of people struggle with animals, and when I was younger, I struggled with drawing animals. Now, even to this day, am I the best when it comes down to it? No. However, like anything, you have to look at the reference, get used to looking at the reference, draw it, practice makes perfect, perfect. Practice makes perfect, and you do things repetitively, over and over and over and over and over and over. And as you keep doing it, it gets easier. And you'd be surprised because a lot of people don't know the growth of whether or not you're designing something on a computer or you drawing something by hand. Just holistically as an artist, people don't really know the growth until you look back at your old work you've done years ago. And it's no different even for people who are not artists. Your body is a canvas. So even fitness, working out, a lot of times, you go to the gym, you're in a caloric deficit, you're trying to lose some weight. And a lot of times we get so caught up on a day-to-day basis that we're not thinking or we're not believing in seeing the progress unless you look at your old photo that you took of yourself years ago and you're like, whoa, I don't even look like that person, And it happens because you see yourself every single day, so you don't see the progress. It's no instant gratification. So it's the same thing when it comes down to a canvas that's not just a human canvas, but a canvas on a sketchbook, a canvas on a painting canvas, a digital canvas on a computer screen using Adobe Photoshop, Adobe Illustrator, or Procreate, whatever you use. It's all the same thing, and that's the whole point of the channel, is to let people know, like, it's all holistically the same thing. Whether your body's a canvas, which is fitness, and you're trying to stay healthy, look better, get stronger, have more muscularity, whatever it is, having a better shape and figure, right? Or you're just creating a work of art. It's the same. And that's the takeaway. So going back to the whole Beast Titan, I was doing a few cross hashing, right? So in case you don't know what cross hashing is, that's when you are creating a texture of having lines going opposite direction of each other, which then creates a different style of value, a different style of shadows, right? I should say volume, I said value. It does have value, right? It makes it look more realistic, but it also has volume, right? It gives it a volume look. So with those type of lights and shadows. So it's really important when you implement that style, especially with a ballpoint pen, or if you're using any type of micron. I never was a big fan of using microns. To each his own. I personally I like using stuff that I can easily have, that's accessible, and you can have so many of these to the point where there's so many times in my when I was in college, also when I was in when I used to work in offices, right? We used to work in office after college. They had just a bunch of ballpoint pens, right? And I just took so many of them, like, because it's just something that it's like pennies, you know, like no one really cares. Like, oh, you want to take a bunch of them? Oh, you can have it. So I have so many of these ballpoint pens, right? And they die out over time, but they just create the most amazing textures. And I've seen some content creators, they play around with it. A lot of times I've seen a few of them play with like a blue ballpoint pen. I've done illustrations like on my sketchbook where I used a blue ballpoint pen and I mixed it with Copic markers, and it came out really cool. The only kickback to that is the materials, they blend really well, but it destroys the Copic markers. Let's put it that way. Like the Copic markers get destroyed because of the ink of the ballpoint pen. So if you want to keep the longevity of the Copic markers or Prisma markers, do not mix it with pen. As in, don't draw with a pen and then add the Copic markers on top of it, because you're gonna damage the Copic markers or Prisma markers, and those things are expensive. So I learned that the hard way. And I sip the Kool-Aid with Copic markers because they're amazing, don't get me wrong, but it's not one of those things. I know there's people who are really good with that material of using Copic markers, but people shouldn't get caught up just because there are talented people that know how to use it, that you should end up using it. Stick to cheap stuff, get really good at that, and then make the decision over time if you want to upgrade towards a higher end material. Just like making a YouTube channel, right? You don't want to just go off the bat and get like a Sony like 8000 or whatever is like the highest end Sony cameras, and then your channel ain't going anywhere. You know, like that's gonna be frustrating. So start cheap, and as you progress naturally, then you could take the natural step of getting higher end materials. But yeah, I was one of those people where I didn't understand that when I was younger. When I was in college. So I bought so many Copic markers, and a lot of them to this day, they barely work. A lot of them don't even work right now. So it's like because of what I've done in the past, but with adding it with the ballpoint pen. But anyway, going back to this, I don't know, maybe in the future I might do something where I'll add Prisma. Is it Prisma color? Yeah. The color pencils. I might add color pencils, a little bit of color to it. We'll see. But I do like the contrast between a black and white grayscale traditional, and then you guys see the digital version, which is completely different styles, but it's the same, same artist, but different styles. And let me know what style you guys prefer in the end, let me know down below. Anyway, yeah, so going back to talking about the process of this, I'm very into faces, right? Faces to me is my cup of tea. That's what I like to captivate that. I mean, I grew up watching different anime shows, Dragon Ball Z, Yu Yu Hakusho, Rurouni Kenshin, Cowboy Bebop, Gundam, right? All these shows, right? Then later on, One Punch Man, Attack, obviously AOT, Baki. I love the Baki series, right? So Parasite, Kengan Tournament, all that stuff. And even though that's 3D, but like I really like face expressions. Face expressions, they don't need to be realistic, but I just like faces, and I like to captivate faces, and that gives me the confidence if the face is done right. That's how I am. If the face is done right, I can get away with messing up the body a little bit. The anatomy don't need to be perfect, but if the body looks good but the face isn't right, to me it just throws it off, in my opinion. So, and I like doing close-ups, right? Just like in film, close-ups are really cool, or video games where they do a lot of close-ups. I like doing the series of these where they close up because I really get into that detail and try to bring my style with the ballpoint pen with it. I like close-ups over the whole like head to toe. I prefer close-ups. So that's that. But yeah, so I added a lot of the reflective lighting and just having him with him looking outwards, with the Zeke Beast Titan. Now the biggest challenge, like I said before, was the hair. When the face was pretty much good to go, working on the hair was tedious. It was tedious. Was it as tedious as Colossus Titan or Armor Titan? No, but it hurt my hand because I had to scrape in there with the shadows and the volume of the hair and giving that directional lighting of that, right? So I couldn't escape making his hair the same tone as his skin, because then there's no contrast. The contrast is lights and shadows, and if there's a lack of contrast, then there's a lack of things popping out. If it don't really pop out, that means it looks flat. And the whole point of an artist to draw in a sketchbook, especially if you're trying to create those lights and shadows, you want to create that illusion as if it's popping out of the screen. Well, if it's digital, popping out of the screen, but on a sketchbook, you wanted to create the illusion as if it's popping out the sketchbook. So I had to make the left-hand side darker. That's the darkest part there. And then at the same time, I had to go underneath the beard and make that shadow, so that way the beard can pop out more. And underneath there, when I was doing a lot of cross hashing, just playing around with the cross hashing right there, so that way you could create that volume. So yeah, so a lot of this was ingenuity, looking at the reference, really understanding directional lighting, understanding the different characteristics of the character, like the iconography, like his nose, the muscle eyebrows, as I call it, his pointy ears, his thick beard, right? Short nose, his hairy body, and then incorporate that with the ballpoint pen in my interpretation. Hair is a tricky thing. A lot of people get lost with the sauce with hair. One of my professors when I was in college, well, he wasn't my professor, but he is a professor, and he said, don't look at hairs as a strand. Look at hairs as a shape. So get the shape of the hair first, and then work on the details. And that's really important, because that's the same thing when it comes down to when you start off with a sketch. You don't just go into the detail and get intimidated by the amount of detail you have to put in. No, you start off with the structure first, like building a house. You start off with the structure first, and then you start working on the details later on. So keep that in mind with hair. Hair could be complicated if you make it complicated. But if you think about it as a shape, then everything else will flow. No pun intended with hair flowing. And this definitely did not have any hair flowing, but you know what I mean when it comes down to this sketch. So it's interesting because looking at the first one with Aaron, because that's when I was kind of rusty drawing traditional, and now here it's like I got back into the hang of it, and I've noticed that each page the contrasts have gone darker and darker and darker, meaning that I became more comfortable and confident and not fidgety like before. Now it's more like making bold decisions and understanding, and it reflects that with the sketch. So all in all, this sketch didn't take too long. I had my own personal issues. I mean, I'm a human being, I'm not AI. I had a personal issue, and this is the first time that led me into making this instead of it like before where everything was in one take, where I didn't edit nothing. This is a B-roll, by the way. So this is the first time that I actually did it as a B-roll, where I recorded it twice rather than just doing it in one recording. So you guys to hear my voice, and then you guys see the work in the speed illustration. All right, so that's pretty much it. Let me know what you guys think down below. If you have any suggestions, throw it down below, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye-bye.